All right, everybody. Um, what I've done is pretty much I went ahead made sure to sim every game that's happened so far in college football, and now I'm gonna go see what the game predicts to happen in real life. So I'm even up to last night's games. Delaware, I made sure Delaware, Missouri State, Western Kentucky, Kennesaw State all won, and then um, I went through every week and made sure the winner of the actual game was the winner, to make it more realistic. Also, as you can tell, I just picked a random coach. I'm the Air Force. I'm some random dude, so I'm not like controlling this at all. But I just wanted to go through, see kind of what would happen if I used the real life win loss records for each team. So I'm just going to continue going each week, and we'll go week to week and kind of look at it that way. As you can see on the game, the top 25 is fairly realistic to what it is in real life. Ohio State being 1, Indiana 2, A&M, Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, and so on down. All right. As far as the big games this first week, there's definitely some in the SEC, like always. Uh, Missouri, Vandy, big one for Vandy especially because no one really expects Vandy to win. If they could beat Missouri like they did LSU last week, that'd be big. Ole Miss, Oklahoma, that may be almost an elimination game into the playoff. A&M trying to stay undefeated against LSU. Texas needs to win, keep winning, of course. And then Arkansas, Auburn, they just got to find a way for one of them to get a conference win. One of them's going to get their first conference win. But that's the big games in that conference. For conference, not USA, hang on. For the American Conference, the big one I'm looking at is actually USF and Memphis. One of these has the inside track at most likely getting into that 12 seed automatic bid in the playoff if they win this game. So we'll see who wins that game. Big 12, obviously, BYU still has the best chance to get in. One of those teams will get in, whoever wins the conference. But them, Arizona State, Texas Tech especially, will be looking at them. ACC, obviously Clemson's, they've had a terrible year. But Georgia Tech is undefeated. Miami's just got that one loss to Louisville. And SMU, of course, they got into the field last year. So I'll be interested to see that. And then also, can Bill Belichick turn it around North Carolina? I don't know. And then looks like Notre Dame may be on a bye week. But Notre Dame's another team you should kind of watch out for. So we'll kind of just look into that and see. We'll be able to, at the end of the season, kind of see what this predicts and see how accurate it ended up being. All right, so we'll go ahead and sim this first week. Let's see what happens. See if there's any upsets, any big. Okay, so don't even worry about the Air Force thing because that's kind of irrelevant. All right, so scores, schedules, going back to week 9. All right, let's go ACC. Georgia Tech survives Syracuse, so they stay undefeated. That's big. NC beat Virginia. That would be big in real life. What else? Miami beating Stanford up. That's good for them. Louisville lost to BC. That would be a kind of a surprise too. SMU beating up a Wake. That's good for them too, as far as the playoff concerns are considered. The American, Memphis wins, so they may have the inside track, depending on what Navy does in getting into that 12th seed in the playoff. Big 12, Arizona State does what it needs to do. Check out BYU. BYU gets beat by Iowa State, so that would be huge for Iowa State. Very, very bad for BYU. Texas Tech takes care of business as well. The Big Ten, Indiana stays undefeated, beats UCLA. Nebraska wins. Iowa beats Minnesota, so they beat Row the Boat. Michigan beats Michigan State. Rutgers wins. Oregon blasts Wisconsin. And then Illinois beating up on Washington. All right. SEC, South Carolina upsets Bama. That would be huge. Vandy, unfortunately, does not beat Missouri. So Missouri gets a 10. Kentucky beats Tennessee. Oklahoma beats Ole Miss. A&M stays undefeated, winning in Baton Rouge at night. The Piggies lose 40-28, so they stay. They go 0-4 in conference, and then Hugh Freeze. Maybe this is a chance for him to save his job. And then Texas blasts Mississippi State. All right. So that kind of gives you an idea. See if there's any other teams real quick. Obviously, Navy, we said won. SMU took care of business. A&M is down number 1, which is kind of crazy. But that's kind of what happened in week 9, which would be this upcoming week if you're watching it right now. We'll go to the next week. See some of the big games. See how they turn out. All right. Don't worry about the Air Force stuff. It's irrelevant. Don't care. And I'm not going to be playing any of these, by the way, because I don't want to mess up anything on the sim. Okay, going back to week 10. All right. ACC. UNC has Belichick's got them revived. 31-14 over Q's. Ja Tech stays undefeated. Notre Dame wins, which they had to. Clemson beats Duke. Va Tech beats Louisville. Florida State finally gets them an ACC win. SMU beats Miami. That's huge for SMU. Cal blasts Virginia. Pitt beats Stanford. Memphis gets beat by Rice, which is a killer for them. Navy gets blasted. I say blasted. They lose by 3 to North Texas. And then you turn around and, well, the other team, who was the other one we were looking at the second ago? I guess they're a bye week. We'll have to see how that affects their conference. Iowa State holds on against Arizona State. That's big for them. Houston wins. Arizona beats Colorado and Dion. Baylor wins. Kansas beats Oklahoma State. Texas Tech does its job. Utah gets beat by Cincinnati. The Big Ten, the Ohio State beats Penn State. Penn State continues to unravel on itself. Minnesota row the boat beats Sparty. Illinois beats Rutgers. Michigan beats Purdue. Nebraska, Coach Rule finds a way to get it done against USC. And then the Indiana team that continues to just win games beats Maryland and stays undefeated. Conference USA, just kind of get a little look at those right there. It's not even a team that's undefeated right now. SEC, Mississippi State, 18-point win over Archie. Vandy beats Texas, which would be crazy. Oklahoma beats Tennessee. Auburn beat Kentucky, so Auburn's on a roll. It goes from 0-4 in the conference to 2 wins between first Arkansas, now Kentucky. And then Florida beats Georgia, which would be a big kind of upset. South Carolina beats Ole Miss. So Ole Miss has just collapsed the last 2 weeks. All right, so which is not obviously good for them. Looking at the projected bracket going into Week 11, Navy would get that vital 12th seed, that at-large play-in. And then you have Ja Tech at 5, 9 and 8 would be Texas Tech, Notre Dame. BYU from the Big 12 would get that versus Oregon, Michigan, and Missouri. And then your byes would be Ohio State, Indiana, Oklahoma, and A&M. So you would have 2 Big 10 and 2 SEC schools getting the byes as of this moment. All right. So, and then the Heisman watch right now. Mateer from Oklahoma leads the pack. Jennings from SMU, Holstein from Pitt, Johnson from K-State, and then Brinson from SMU. So you got two guys from SMU who obviously they're having a great year. All right, so we'll go to next week. Send through Week 11, see what happens. It'd be awesome to see some team like like an Indiana, SMU, somebody like that win the whole thing. But we know that may not be always realistic. But all right, so go back to week 11. There's some big games here. Um, Florida State beats Clemson. Miami beats Syracuse. SMU continues to win. Beats Boston College. Duke wins. Belichick, 3 games in a row, winner. Louisville beats Cal. Big 12. Big one here. TCU beats Iowa State. Colorado wins. Texas Tech beats BYU. That's a huge one. All right, Big 10. Northwestern USC handles business. Oregon beats Iowa. Ohio State upset by Purdue. That would be huge. That'd be crazy. Nebraska UCLA. UCLA gets the dub. Washington beats Wisconsin. The Terps beat Rutgers. And then Penn State, of all teams, after not being able to win games for multiple weeks, firing their head coach, finds a way at Happy Valley to beat Indiana. So Indiana's perfect season is over. Obviously, Notre Dame beats up on Navy. In the SEC, Ole Miss takes care of business at the FCS school. Florida beats Kentucky. LSU beats Bama in Bama. Georgia beats Mississippi State. Vandy beats Auburn. And then a 7-versus-1 matchup of A&M and Missouri goes to Mizzou. So Mizzou is now the #1 team in the nation right now. All right, so crazy week 11. Scores. Now we're going to sim through week 12. Let's see what happens. And so far, if you're an Arkansas fan, you're not happy. We lost our 2 games to Auburn, Mississippi State, which are probably our best chances of winning because we got Texas. I had Texas, I had LSU, and at home against Missouri left, who's right now the #1 team. All right, let's look at this again. Score schedule. Let's see what happened week 12. Go back to week 12. ACC, Clemson beats Louisville. Florida State beats Vatech. UNC finally loses to Wake. Georgia Tech gets beat by Boston College. Duke beats Virginia. Miami holds on against NC State. And then kind of a shocker here, Pitt beating Notre Dame. That's really going to hurt Notre Dame. That's their 3rd loss of the year. And the American, Navy not getting the job done against USF. So we'll see how that factors in. All right, in the Big 12, K-State handles business. Texas Tech, #2, beats UCF. Arizona State wins. Baylor beats Utah. Cincy beats Zona. And then BYU gets beat again, this time by TCU. In the Big 10, Oregon, now #1, beats Minnesota. Michigan, all the way up to #3, beats Northwestern. Illinois beats the Terps. The Ohio State loses for the 2nd week in a row. A shocker, this time to UCLA. UCLA, that'll be a big one because UCLA already shocked Penn State for their first victory after starting 0-4. And then that kind of started their collapse, and you can see what happened to James Franklin. He's fired now. Indiana beats Wisconsin. Washington beats Purdue. Penn State beats Michigan State. And then finally, Iowa inches out by 1 on USC. All right. SEC. Here we go. Kentucky blasts FCS school. Tennessee beats New Mexico State. South Carolina beats A&M. Bama beats Oklahoma. Florida beats Ole Miss. Mississippi State beats Mizzou. Arkansas, what a way to get their first victory in SEC play. 38-32, probably under the lights in Baton Rouge. Huge game, huge upset. And then Georgia beats Texas. All right, so as of right now, let's see what some of those, especially the Ohio State 2 losses, see how this is starting to affect this bracket. All right, as of right now, Oregon becomes the #1 team. 2 is Texas Tech, 3 Michigan, 4 Illinois. And then obviously Missouri was the 1. They dropped down to 7. They're going to be against Oklahoma. Georgia Tech versus Georgia. So that would be an in-state playoff game. Miami, SMU, Indiana. And then Boise State would get that important 12 seed as of this moment. All right, so the bracket is ever-changing. Let's see about the Heisman watch. All right. Still got kind of the same guys. We got Brandon Lewis from Memphis that snuck up there, though, and Jeremiah Smith as well from Ohio State. All right, so week 13. Let's go ahead and see what happens week 13. We're running out of weeks, getting down to the nitty gritty to see what happens. See who's going to get in, who's not, who's going to get into what bowl games, who's going to win the Heisman. All according to College Football 26, which we know how that goes. That doesn't mean it's always very accurate. All right, so going on this scores and schedule. Let's see. Going back to week 13, in the ACC, Florida State beats NC State. SMU gets beat up by Louisville, which is not good for them and their playoff hopes. Clemson wins. Notre Dame beats up on Cuse. Wake wins. Ja Tech, big win over Pitt and a close one. Miami beats Va Tech. UNC gets beat by the rival Duke, and Cal beats Stanford. All right. Georgia beat up on Charlotte, which we'll get to in a second. North Texas, 30-10, trying to get a slot. USF trying to get in there too. They beat UAB. Big 12. Houston beats TCU. Baylor wins. UCF beats Oklahoma State. Utah wins. Kansas beats Iowa State. Cincy, 17-14, big win over BYU. And Arizona State beats Colorado. Big 10, The Ohio State finally rebounds, beats Rutgers. Minnesota beats Northwestern. Sparty beats Iowa. Michigan beats Maryland. The Illini beat Wisconsin. Penn State beats Nebraska. Number 1 Oregon inches by USC in the Coliseum. And Washington beats UCLA. Notre Dame beat Cuse. In the SEC, Texas blast Arkansas 52-10 in Austin. A&M wins against FCS school. Auburn wins the FCS school. Bama blasts FCS school as well. LSU beats Western Kentucky. South Carolina beats Coastal Carolina. Georgia beats Charlotte. Oklahoma beats Missouri. Vandy beats Kentucky. And finally Tennessee beats Florida. All right, so that's big. And we'll see how that affected the bracket. See if there's any changes, big changes there. 1 still Oregon, 2 Texas Tech, 3 Michigan, Illinois is at 4. Look at Vandy jumping up there. I like when Vandy's in. Vandy versus Oklahoma, Missouri versus Georgia. Georgia Tech drops, goes from 11 to 9, not drops, but goes up really. Georgia Tech, Miami, and then USF is still holding on and wanting to be that important at-large 12 seed that's out of the Power 4 conference. All right, so we're going through this next week, and this is big because this is like pretty much the main week left and determining who's getting the conference championships, and then how each team is going to be potentially seeded in the playoff and their bowl games, etc. So, going back, let's look at scores. All right. Go back 1 week. ACC. NC State beats UNC. Duke beats Wake. Virginia beats Virginia Tech. BC beats Cuse. Georgia beats up on Ja Tech, which hurts Georgia Tech's chance of the playoff. Pretty much secures Georgia's. Louisville beats Kentucky. Miami beats Pitt. SMU beats Cal. Notre Dame beats Stanford. Florida beat Florida State. South Carolina beats Clemson. American. Memphis gets beat by Navy. Army wins. North Texas. USF wins, which they're hoping they can hold on to that 12th seed over Rice. Big 12. Kansas beats Utah. Zona beats Arizona State. Texas Tech with a big win over West Virginia. Iowa State beats Oklahoma. UCF beats BYU. Cincinnati beats TCU. Colorado beats Kansas State. And Baylor beats Houston. Big 10. Iowa beats Nebraska. The Ohio State gets revenge from the last, 3 years? I think it's been since they beat Michigan. They go to Ann Arbor and get a victory there. Illinois beats Northwestern. Rutgers beats Penn State. Minnesota beats Wisconsin. USC beats rival UCLA. Indiana beats Purdue. Oregon beats Washington. And the Terps of Maryland beat Michigan State. Notre Dame beats Stanford by 1. SEC. Arkansas with a huge upset. to end the year. They get their second conference win and their fourth overall win, 42-30 at home against Missouri. Tennessee beats Vandy. Georgia beats Georgia Tech. Louisville beats Kentucky. LSU beats Oklahoma. Texas beats Texas A&M. Ole Miss beats Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl. Auburn beats Bama in a huge win in the Iron Bowl. Florida State, Florida wins. South Carolina beats Clemson. All right, so let's see how that's affected the bracket. And USF still has that 12 seed. Right now, Oregon still 1, Georgia, Texas Tech, Indiana. Ohio State gets back in against Cincinnati, SMU, Miami. Notre Dame, Michigan, and USF, Illinois would be in as of right this moment. All right. We'll go through this last week right here. Army-Navy week. I'll just skip the Air Force stuff. Had to be somebody to do this. All right, so going into week 15, should have only been one game, which it was. Navy beats Army. All right, going into conference championship week. Big for potential playoff berth. North Texas, USF. Winner of that one has a huge chance of getting in. Georgia Tech, SMU. Cincinnati, Texas Tech. Oregon, Indiana. Liberty, Western Kentucky. Western Michigan, Ohio. Fresno State, UNLV. Oklahoma, Georgia. And James Madison, Southern Mississippi will be your conference championship games, which could help dictate / decide these bowl games and who gets in and who does not get in. All right. So we'll send past conference. All right. And your Heisman winner, quarterback, Oklahoma, John Mateer, 35 touchdowns, 3,312 yards. All right. Let's check out some of these staff moves, especially the head coaches. Lincoln Riley gets fired. Hugh Freeze fired. Matt Rule fired. Stoops fired. Sharon Moore from Michigan fired. Pry from Virginia Tech fired. Ash, the D coordinator, supposedly goes to the NFL. All right. Stoops fired. Head coach of Temple retires. Any other big ones? We knew Bray would be fired. Surprisingly, in this sim, Arkansas's coach does not get fired, even though they went 4-8. But a lot of realistic ones here too. But then, of course, it's left off. Obviously, Florida. Gundy did get fired in real life. Oregon State's got fired in real life. UAB's did. Vatex did. Kentucky's on the kind of. They're not for sure yet. Rule's not so much. Auburn's may end up getting fired, and then Lincoln Riley would be a big one if that happened in real life. Now let's check out scores real quick. The conference championship games. All right. So USF beats North Texas by 1, 39-38. SMU beats Georgia Tech. Texas Tech beats Cincinnati. Oregon beats Indiana. Liberty beats Western Kentucky. Ohio beats Western Michigan. UNLV beats Fresno State. Georgia beats Oklahoma, and James Madison beats Southern Mississippi for the conference championship games. So now the bracket is set, and in the bracket, the 1 seed is Oregon, 2, Georgia, 3, Texas Tech, 4, Illinois. They'll get the byes. And then the 5 seed Miami will host USF, who got that 12 seed that everybody was looking for. Michigan will host Notre Dame. Indiana will host Cincinnati. And then Ohio State will host SMU in the first round. We already talked about the Heisman winner. Second place was Zachariah Branch, Jennings, Smith, and Moore, the quarterback from Oregon. Award winners. The Maxwell was Mateer, same guy. Same thing with Walter Camp, Bear Bryant, Dan Mullen, Coach of the Year, Davey O'Brien, same guy. Chuck Bednarik, the best Mike was from Texas, Anthony Hill, Bronco, Nagurski, Hill. Defensive back was Devon Boykin from Indiana. Doak Walker, Mackay Hughes from Oregon. Bledikoff was Branch. Lombardi, Bain Jr. from Miami. Golden Arm was Reese Puffenbarger, I think I'm saying that right, from North Texas. Edge Rusher of the Year. Bain. Jane Roberts, Outland Trophy. Mackey, Best Tight End, Oscar Delt from Georgia. DC, Broyles Award. Shile Wood, DC from Texas Tech. Dick Buckus Award. Anthony Hill. Remington was Brady Small from Army. Luke Rosa, Best Kicker, Georgia's Peyton Woodrig. Best Punter, Western Michigan's Cole Maynard. Maiden Smith from Louisiana was the Best Jet Award. And the Sean Alexander Award for the Best Freshman was C.J. Carr, the quarterback for Notre Dame. So that goes through the kind of the awards list there. Bowl matchups, especially this first week. Old Dominion Ball State and the Adventures Bowl, Alamo Bowl, Utah State BYU, Arizona Bowl, Western Michigan UNLV. Mississippi State gets a bowl. They get to play Tulane and Armed Forces Bowl. Toledo to Kennesaw State and Bahamas Bowl. Tennessee Cal, Birmingham Bowl. The Ratton Bowl, New Mexico State, Georgia State. That's all playoffs. Citrus Bowl, USC versus Vandy. That'd be a good game to watch. Illinois gets a bye. Western Kentucky, Buffalo, and Cure Bowl. The Mayo Bowl, Louisville, Nebraska. Idaho Bowl, Louisiana Tech, Boise State. Fenway Bowl, Delaware, Virginia. First Responder Bowl, Florida International, Texas State. Frisco Bowl, UCF, ECU. Clemson, Ohio, in the game above, Sports Bowl. Florida State, Oklahoma, in the Gasparilla Bowl, which that could be a good one potentially. LSU, Navy, in the Gator Bowl. San Diego State, Yukon, Hawaii Bowl. Pitt, Hawaii, Holiday Bowl. Liberty, Arizona State, Independence Bowl. Wake Forest, Fresno State, LA Bowl. Las Vegas Bowl, Washington State, Alabama. Iowa State, South Carolina, Liberty Bowl. Memphis, NC State, the Military Bowl. Music City Bowl, Texas, Iowa. Southern Mississippi versus North Texas, who barely missed out on the playoff. And the Myrtle Beach Bowl. TCU, James Madison, New Mexico Bowl. Jacksonville State, Troy, New Orleans Bowl. Baylor, Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, that for a long time was undefeated. I was hoping they'd make it in, but they didn't. They'll be in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Wright Bowl, Houston, Minnesota. Reliquist Bowl, Washington A&M. Salute to Veterans Bowl, Miami University, which is in Ohio, against Georgia Southern. New Mexico versus Duke in the Sun Bowl. And then finally the Texas Bowl, Florida and Kansas. So we'll see kind of how those end up going, especially this first week. Let's see, first week of it, so we got bowl season. See, look at these scores on bowl season 1. All right, so Ball State beats Old Dominion. BYU beats Utah State. UNLV beats Western Michigan. Mississippi State wins Arden Force Bowl against Tulane. Tennessee beats Cal in the Birmingham Bowl. Mexico State beats Georgia State. We'll skip this stuff. I'll go back to it in a second. West Virginia beats Buffalo beats Western Kentucky. Boise State beats Louisiana Tech. Virginia beats Delaware. ECU beats UCF. Clemson beats up on Ohio. Oklahoma beats Florida State. San Diego State beats Connecticut. Pitt beats Hawaii. Arizona State beats Liberty. Fresno beats Wake. Bama beats Wake Forest. South Carolina beats Iowa State. Memphis beats NC State. Texas beats Iowa. North Texas beats USM. TCU beats James Madison. Jacksonville State beats Troy. Baylor beats Georgia Tech. Houston beats Minnesota. And Miami of Ohio beats Georgia Southern. And then go to our bracket. We may have seen some of those already. But, all right, starting from the top. USF, Cinderella type season ends in Miami, losing 42-28. Miami will advance to play Illinois. Notre Dame goes into Ann Arbor in a playoff game, beats Michigan 48-42 to go to advance to play Oregon. Indiana wins at home 34-28 over Cincinnati, and their reward is Texas Tech. And then Ohio State takes care of business at home against SMU, and then they will get to go play Georgia, a familiar foe for them. All right. Let's go next week. See how it goes. All right, here we go. In the quarterfinal, Miami beats Illinois 28-20 to advance to the semifinal. And then Oregon beats Notre Dame 33-21, which will set up a Miami Hurricane versus Oregon Duck semifinal. On the other side, Indiana takes care of business by 1 point over Texas Tech, 36-35. They advance. And then The Ohio State beats Georgia 41-23 to advance to the semifinal to take on Indiana. So we have on the bottom those Indiana, Ohio State, the two Big Ten teams. Oregon's a Big Ten team, and then Miami's ACC team. So 3 out of the 4 being Big Ten teams. Unfortunately, none of the SEC teams get to the semifinal, which is a big shocker. Not good for us homers. But we'll see what happens in the semifinals. All right, in the semifinals. Not really a big surprise, but number 1 Oregon, 34-31, close game against Miami. They will go to the national championship, and they'll face The Ohio State, who beats up on Indiana 40-14. So now we have an all Big Ten championship game with number 1 seed Oregon facing number 7 seed The Ohio State, winner take all. And this would obviously be not the first time that they've met. They met last year in the playoff as well. They just didn't meet for the championship. All right. All right, and then the winner, the Oregon Ducks, 45-31 in Miami in the Hard Rock Stadium, beat The Ohio State 45-31. Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks have done it. They've overcome The Ohio State. Ohio State 14 points from potentially, really 15 from going back-to-back, but instead Oregon takes the national championship. So Dan Lanning finally gets it done, which is obviously huge for him. Let's see if there's anything else on the staff moves. We'll just do head coaches. All right, so here's some crazy stuff too before I get off here. Sarkisian has left his job at Texas to take the Michigan job. Iowa State's Matt Campbell leaves Iowa State for Kentucky. Silverfield leaves Memphis for Auburn. Drinkwitz leaves Missouri for Baylor. Lane Kiffin leaves Ole Miss to go to Texas. Kansas coach leaves to go to Wisconsin. Luke Riley, who was fired, is now the head coach at Oklahoma State. PJ Fleck leaves to go take the Nebraska job. Toledo coach Candle goes to West Virginia. Chang, Hawaii's coach, is the Oregon State's coach now. Jim Mora leaves UConn to go to Iowa State. Kyle Whittingham leaves Utah to go to USC. Matt Rule was fired at Nebraska, but now is the Virginia Tech head coach. Auburn's Hugh Freeze fired, now the Syracuse head coach. Cal's head coach Wilcox leaves Cal to go to Utah. Moore, the coach at Michigan, was fired, but now is the coach at Miami, Ohio University. Helton leaves Georgia Southern for the Michigan State job. Cumbie leaves Louisiana Tech for the Stanford job. Here's a local one. Butch Jones leaves Arkansas State for the Northern Illinois job. Kentucky, Mark Stoops gets fired from Kentucky, but then takes the Temple job. And then here's just some random other ones. I don't know if there's anybody else really worth. There's Fickle. Luke Fickle was fired by Wisconsin. He's the Minnesota head coach. Syracuse's Fran Brown fired. Now Kent State's head coach. Mike Gundy finds him a new home in Missouri State. Ken, I can't even begin to pronounce that, but he's a good coach. He left San Jose State for Hawaii. Major Applewhite, head coach of South Alabama, is now head coach at Ole Miss. Jonathan Smith, Michigan State, now at San Jose State. Jeff Choate, head coach at Nevada, is now head coach at Akron. And Piatsky, who is coach at Eastern Michigan, took the Missouri job. All right. So a lot of surprises here. Obviously, here's the thing updated with Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks winning 45-31 over the Ohio State. Ohio State tried their best to repeat, just came up a little short. But we'll see how accurate this is once playoffs start. Hope y'all enjoyed the video. Obviously, with College Football 26, who knows how accurate this will be. This may not even have hardly any of the same teams, but try to use the scores from the real life up until this point to try to make it as realistic as possible. So that'll be it for this video. I'm signing out.